Doing.
Man, I missed that sound.
Yeah, missing the music, and we're back. We're back, Louie. It's Lamb. Bahookie's here. We're back with Fifth Down Territory, presented by StadiumRant. Just happy to be here. And man, preseason's over. I really wish it was back in a couple years ago where preseason would be over and then football would be on this current weekend coming up. But we got a whole nother weekend to wait. So we're gonna get into some final preseason thoughts for all these teams and some news that was dropped down today. So we can just start with some of that, nice news drop. So we can start with Jonathan Taylor not being moved. I heard that Miami sent over what they thought was a fair offer, and they also thought that they didn't want to start a bidding war against themselves. So, Louis, what do you think a fair offer for Jonathan Taylor would be currently, as it stands right now?
I think they probably offered a second and maybe some low round compensation, or maybe a third and a player. I could see that package as well if they were trying to move off of somebody. The truth of the matter is that they have to give him a big contract, and he has an injury history. So, and also you have to assume that any team who's going to be competing for him, the Eagles or the Dolphins, those are going to be low picks. So your first is basically a second, and your second's basically a third. So in their mind, a first is probably too rich. So I imagined it was a second that the Colts just viewed as not worth where they would be picking from.
Ricky, how do you feel about Jonathan Taylor staying put and being placed on the PUP list? So he won't play for the first 4 games. How are you feeling about that? Oh,
yeah, couple good points. I think Louis pretty much verbatim hit the compensation that I probably would have said, with a second and a late round pick or a third and a player, probably like a younger player who is probably in a similar situation. They were talking about maybe Christian Wilkins being the trade compensation. And honestly, as a Bills fan, as good of a player as Jonathan Taylor is, having a guy like Christian Wilkins, a top defensive tackle, that would be a bigger loss for their team, in my opinion. But
I think
out for 4 weeks. So basically between weeks 4 and the trade deadline, or where he's going to be where he's probably going to end up getting moved. But this paves the way for Deion Jackson to get some touches, and maybe Zach Moss when he comes forearm fracture, and I think Evan Hull is their other young guy that they just drafted. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, when you got Anthony Richardson coming out there, you would really like to have him as an asset, but gonna have to go back to the drawing board there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I honestly just made a couple of moves in some fantasy leagues and got off Jonathan Taylor. I've been on him since he got drafted, and you know very well the highlight reel against USF that put him on the map. So I've been very high on Taylor. I still think that he's a tremendous player. It's just right now the running back market and the way that teams like to give up all of they just give up their leverage in these situations. They don't get in on these contracts early enough for these players, and then the rest of the league's why should I give you anything of solid value when you're just going to be stuck with him and not be able to do he might not play. You can't get anything of value. Why am I going to outbid myself in this current situation? So it's a tough break for JT here. He's going to miss at least 4 games this season. The only thing that I could see happening, if he stays on the team and doesn't play, if he stays injured, we don't know what that injury is right now. It's undisclosed, but if he stays on the injured reserve, I'm pretty sure it still counts as a full season, and he doesn't get fined for missing games because he's technically injured. So this could be his way out. after this year, but it rarely works out for running backs who kind of make this move. So unfortunate situation there all around. I honestly think the Colts are going to be pushing for like a Marvin Harrison Jr. type pick, like that like level, that top 5 area. Enough about them for currently or for right now. We'll get back onto them a little bit later portion of the show. So 2 Buffalo Bills moves here. Von Miller to the IR and Boogie Basham traded to the Giants. Bahookie, I'll let you kind of take these and run with them because it's your team and you kind of know the most about these guys at the moment.
Von Miller's to the pup list. It's not season-ending IR, but yeah, he's out for the first 4 weeks. A little bittersweet, but not that bad of news. Honestly, we know what Von Miller's deal is. He's coming back from an ACL, and as good as he was last year for the first 8 games of the season, as a bigger difference maker. We need him for the last 8 games in the playoffs. So I feel like this is a good move to protect him from himself, honestly. And it's going to be an opportunity. It's going to be an opportunity for the guys lower on the edge rushing depth chart. The Leonard Floyd, who we just signed, Greg Russo, AJ Epineza, and then Kingsley Jonathan. A dude from Nigeria who's making our roster is going to get the last spot because we traded away Boogie Basham from that same position group. It's kind of unfortunate looking back that the Bills could have used that pick that they got for him to get like Creed Humphrey, who's like one of the best centers in the league right now with the Chiefs. He was picked like 2 or 3 picks after, and a lot of people, Bills fans, like to bring that up. And it is what it is, but we had him for a couple of years, and he had some value, not really a lot of value, and we were just a little bit too deep at that specific position for him to really have a place. And so they sent him over. Obviously, Brian Dable has been over here. He's familiar with them, and they get a 7th round pick swap in 2025.
Yeah. So now we can hit on a couple of moves from my Patriots, which had kind of just has me spinning around the block. They waived both Bailey Zappi and Malik Cunningham. They also released Ty Montgomery, waived Kevin Harris, traded Pierre Strong. So a position that they were looking to beef up in the running backs is also just with 2 players. There's only 2 players there. There's 1 quarterback on the roster. I don't know what to say. I mean, this is just taking 4th round capital that they love to have their 4th round picks, and it just seems like they're just wasting them year after year. 2 tight ends and I don't even remember their names now. 2 3rd round tight ends a couple years ago. Neither one are on the roster. 2 4th round running backs, a 4th round quarterback, all kind of off the roster. Like, these are picks again, Blake, like you said, they with some foresight, there's some decent players around those picks, and none of them are on our team. So my thing is, like, maybe Zappi couldn't learn the Bill O'Brien offense, which is just kind of tough because it's not all that intricate of a thing. Like, he doesn't run a crazy, like, detailed, like, you know what I mean? It's not a confusing thing. Like, there's a lot of pieces to it, but Bailey was supposed to be one of those cerebral quarterbacks, and I don't really understand why they would, get rid of him when they're keeping 6 or 7 D linemen and like 8 cornerbacks. Like, get rid of Miles Bryant. Like, that guy has 0 value for you. Bailey Zappi actually started games for you last year. So very confusing over here in New England. The offensive line is also just trash. So that's great. Speaking about other offensive linemen, Kenyon Green got sent to the IR, correct? Or is it the pup list? Do you want to take that one?
Season ending, official as of today. He got injured by Brian Breesy. So they didn't start him with the ones in game 3. And then they put him out with the 2s to get reps, and then he got hurt, and he's done for the season. He has to have surgery on his shoulder, and it won't be rehabbed in time for him to play. So he's done for the year. So first round pick last year, did not finish last year, and didn't look good when he did play. Looked somewhat better this preseason. Did not have the spot locked up, as we saw going into game 3, and then got hurt again. So offensive line is looking – I think it looks better than it has in years past, but, man, it's just on paper, like, it doesn't look as good as it should for how much money is in that group. Like, drafting has been a real issue there for us. I also just kind of want to know, like, as we get into these preseason things, the worst part about preseason is that sometimes it feels like performance doesn't matter. Like, there have been some dudes who balled out this preseason that got cut today, and that sucks for them. Malik Cunningham, I think, is a great example. Like, he looked electric when he played. He looked like he was composed, had good command of the offense. The preseason receiving yard leader was on the Browns. He got cut today. And it's like, okay, what else is he supposed to do? You know, He caught everything that came his way. He was consistently getting open. Like, I know you have a deep wide receiver room over there, but you're telling me there's not room for that guy?
No, I don't think it's all that. Like, it's 4 deep. Like, it's not like they have 6 guys. Like, the Pats have 6 wide receivers on their team. Like, I understand the Browns are a little different because they have like a top end talent in Cooper, and then you have some more like guys with potential and more in DPJ, and then you have Tillman. But like, he showed out. Watkins showed out. Like, he played very well. Like you said, apparently it just doesn't matter if you look good in the preseason. Why are we even having these games if the standouts at least aren't getting the last roster spot? I thought that was kind of what the whole deal was for the preseason.
Like, I'm just going to be transparent. Patriots, right? We could talk about that because, like, you probably watched all those snaps pretty close. Like, Keyshawn Boo looked okay, wherever you say his name. I don't think he looked stellar. I thought Malik Cunningham looked stellar. And then we're talking about, Keyshawn makes the roster and Malik doesn't. And it's not like Malik lost that spot to some other quarterback. Like, there's just no other quarterbacks on the roster now except for Mac Jones. So even if they go pick up like Will Grier, right? He got to play a whole game.
They're looking at Colt McCoy.
It feels meaningless. And I'm sure some of these guys feel like they couldn't have done anything else. So, hopefully some of these guys get a second chance, get picked up on some practice squads and get another opportunity this year, because a lot of them really deserve it. I think we saw some real talent this preseason that's just floating right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think that they're hoping that Zappe falls to the practice squad and doesn't get picked up. But like, he had starter experience. Like, how many young backups have actual have started games and look kind of deep, like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, I wasn't in the Zappe fever. I wasn't like one of those types of guys, but like, he did what he was supposed to do as an NFL backup, as far as I'm concerned. He came in, he played decently. We were in those games, and what else can you do as a backup?
Yeah, I'd feel the same way if they cut Davis Mills today.
Yeah,
be like, he's not great, but
quality
are not something to turn your nose up at in this league. Like, people go down for 4, 5, 6 game stretches all the time, and somebody has to keep that team running. So,
yeah, no, I totally agree with you, man. Blake, you got anything else on the news here? Anything you wanted to add?
You guys did a good job talking about the QB2 position and how important is it or is it not. And this has been another talk amongst Bills fans recently. So we were apparently reportedly in on Trey Lance. Apparently we were like the second team, but the Cowboys outbid us. And Trey Lance would be a pretty awesome backup to have for Josh Allen, honestly, because that's like ideally like the quarterback you want to try and have him be, but then he could be there and not be in a hurry to be that guy. But so we ended up going with Kyle Allen as our backup quarterback, because apparently him and Josh are good friends and they like to golf together.
Gotta have the Allen brothers.
But if Josh goes down hurt, like, That's it. Like there's like
That's easy.
that is it, dude. And like there's not like you and I think that that's honestly the case for most of the NFL. Like I mean, especially the good teams who have that franchise quarterback and are paying their franchise quarterback. It's just like you're certain spots, so you got to try to save money, and if you're going to try and carry a couple extra guys at wide receiver, linebacker, running back for special teams, like then you're going to have to open those roster spots up somewhere else. And yeah, just kind of the unfortunate thing about the 53-man roster and the current salary cap is it's just there's always going to be guys who deserve it.
Honestly,
Don't
the
get it.
53-man roster feels really outdated with the longer season and the fewer bye weeks. Like, I could very easily see the argument for like a 58-man roster at this point.
Yeah. I honestly like that could probably be brought up in a future CBA. It's going to be a little bit until that because they just signed one, but I like that idea quite a lot. Like we can kind of touch on that Trey Lance deal too. Like, what happens if Brock Purdy is just, the last guy picked in the NFL draft? Like, what happens then? Like, what if he ends up playing like the last dude picked in the NFL draft? You know what I mean? Everybody's like, oh, Lance and Shanahan would have been fired if Purdy isn't like a thing. How do we know if he's a thing? Like,
Here's
you know what I mean?
Where I've landed on the Shanahan thing, right? We talk about Shanahan like he's the QB whisperer, that people have called him that. I think I have more come to the conclusion that he can only play with quarterbacks who have a high floor and a low ceiling. He needs them to play in a very specific spot, and he can construct an offense around that. But to say that Brock Purdy is more talented than Trey Lance feels disingenuous. I don't think he has the arm talent. I don't think he has the size or the athleticism. And I don't know if I really saw any wow plays from him last year. Like, he played fine. But to say that he played exceptional, like that he has the ceiling that Trey Lance has, or that Sam Darnold, for that matter, like, I don't know. It's a questionable situation all the way around, and a 4 feels like a slap in the face to every Niner fan.
Yeah, like if you look at what they could have had just staying put at 12, you know what I mean? They could have drafted Mac Jones, they could have drafted Justin Fields, or if you really want to like keep the trade intact and have them trade up like that, what if they had taken like Micah Parsons and paired him with Nick Bosa on that defense? You know what I mean? Like that alone, like with Jimmy Garoppolo, might have been a Super Bowl caliber team still. Like, I'm not like they have a great roster and they're going to be in the thick of it, but I think one of them needs to go for trading 3 firsts for a guy who you evaluated and you're just completely wrong on. Like, everybody's like, oh, they got Purdy in the 7th. It's fine. It's like, is it though? Like, he had one good year and like it wasn't a fantastic year. What he was really doing was getting the ball to his playmakers. Like,
yeah. The problem is, like, you don't expect a 7th round pick to have the upside of a 1st round pick. That's where the issue lies. Like, you found something salvageable. That's awesome. You wrecking your dad's Lamborghini and coming back with a brand new Prius is not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, you can still drive to work tomorrow.
Like, that's a good analogy.
But you're still driving a Prius and not a Lamborghini. Like, at the end of the day, it's just different.
Yeah. Blake, what do you think?
I like what both of you said right there. That was a really, really high quality analogy, Louie. But Tyler, the last thing you said is really kind of a good topic of debate in regards to can making a good pick later make up for making a bad pick before? And I would say yes is the answer to that question. You could debate, no, it doesn't. But I do believe in, second chances for people and whatnot. And give you a prime example with the Bills, because this has been a topic of discussion about Brandon Bean, about some of the picks that he's missed on. Like I just think with Boogie Basham getting traded, people are talking about, they could have had this all like our offensive line is still like, that's an issue in the entire AFC East is the offensive line. They're all like a little below average, and they're like, we really could have had Creed Humphrey here, but instead we took Boogie Basham, who we're trading away. And we drafted Kyer Elam in the first round and moved up a little bit to get him. And right now he's looking like our CB4 behind Christian Benford and Dane Jackson. But then on the other side of that same argument, maybe that speaks to Christian Benford, who's really played really, really well. And he was a 6th round pick the same year we got Kyer Elam. And it was in the story, like week 1 is like, Kyer Elam fails to beat out 6th round pick. And now it's another year later, and the other dude's still playing good. And so it looks like we might have gotten like a gem in the 6th round. And now we have some extra depth. You probably would have, what you want, ideally, your first round picks to be, bona fide starters. But bottom line about the 49ers is they've been one of the best teams in football for the last 3 to 5 years, and that matters, and that helps their job security. If they were missing the playoffs consistently, then I think you're right. They probably would be fired, but I feel like they've kind of built themselves some equity with the results that they've gotten.
Yeah. The way that I tend to look at it, like I understand that, and I think it's easier to kind of stomach that argument because it's one pick. But like if the way I look at it is they picked in the first round 3 years in a row and didn't get a starter and only got a 4th back. Like that's how I look at it. Those 3 first round picks would have gone somewhere else. So it's not the mishandling of one pick, it's the mishandling of 3 really valuable picks that another team turned into Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Bradley Chubb.
The funny thing about that, unfortunately for us talking, but fortunately for the 49ers, is that the 49ers still have a better team than the Dolphins after all that, which is wild.
Well, I think a lot of that. So I think this year is where the real conversation happens because the quarterback play isn't good. And the offensive line, I think, has gotten worse, especially on the right side. You have some questions. So you have Christian McCaffrey. Awesome. If he was good on the Panthers, he's going to be good anywhere. So instead of a friendly offense, that's fine. But like Debo has to come back to form. Kittle has to stay healthy. Like there's some real questions on this team for me right now, especially on the offensive side. And if they can't keep Purdy comfortable in that pocket, this offense may not be as explosive as it's been in the last couple of years. Like all the people on this team, aside from Ayuk, are aging. And I wouldn't say they're aging super well. Like McCaffrey has had a lot of years of injury. And so if he gets hurt this year, if Kittle gets hurt again this year, and you're looking at just Debo and Ayuk and Brock Purdy, like, is that an offense that I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to play the Niners offense this week?
No, so, I totally agree.
Notoriously an injury-prone team. Like, they have injury problems. So
it's like every other year. Like, they'll go a year or two of being really good, and then they'll get destroyed by the injury bug, and they'll be at like 5-12.
Yeah. So, I think that's where we have to look. If at the end of this year, he keeps it afloat. If you can keep it working, I guess, it's unorthodox, but that I can stomach. But if they have a year where they're trusting these aging players and it doesn't pan out, that's when we start talking about the issue where you can't sustain young talent. And that's a problem for this offense.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys. I think that was good for the news. We can get into our final preseason thoughts for all 32 teams now. How I think we can maybe just go like one at a time and start with our teams and then kind of move down from there.
I think you could do by division, maybe, or just pick 4 teams or something. Because I guess you guys are splitting the East, so do like 4 teams. Get 4 thoughts, and we'll rotate like that to kind of keep it moving.
All right, sounds good. I can do that real quick. I'll start with the Pats, Finns, and I'll do the 49ers and Seahawks, kind of since we're talking about it.
Sure.
So the offensive line issues for the Patriots are what some would call very real, very legitimate issues on the offensive line. They're carrying 17 offensive linemen, and I only think 2 of them are any good, like realistically.
Did you say 17?
Yeah.
On the 53-man roster?
Close to it. It's between 14 and 17. Yeah. And literally, the only one that's really any good is Michael Wenu. Like, really. Cole Strange is okay, been banged up all year. Trent Brown is like a moment's notice away from just quitting, like at any time. Like, he could just decide that he's not bought in and just be like one of the worst tackles in the league. Or he could be a good tackle when he's bought in, but you never know what you're going to get there. Then they traded Pierre Strong for a dude who literally hasn't started one game at tackle, who was going to get cut from the Browns. I think his name was Tyree Woodley Jr., something along those lines. I might not be 100% correct there. Then they traded another 6th for Darian Lowe, who does have a little bit of experience, but like honestly, we're on roster cut down day. The guys that you're trading for are essentially going to be released from other teams. You just want to get ahead of the waiver. So big issues across the offensive line.
Not to like jump in and interrupt, which we always do. I always do on the show, but I just felt like there were so many weird trades at the deadline this year, like player swaps, like the Dolphins and the Cowboys swapped corners. There were kickers flying around this year for like late round picks.
Yeah.
I was just like, it was a weird cut down day today.
I think that the thing about it that makes it different this year is that they go from 90 to 53. They don't have the periods where you're like, all right, we got to release 10 players here and we're got to cut down again and again. So I think that spurred a lot of movement this year and like a lot of weird things. Like Nick Folk got traded for a 2025 7th to Tennessee. I guess we're all in on the Chad Ryland train. Another 4th round pick from the Patriots. Definitely need a kicker there, right? Maybe not like, one of those offensive linemen that, whatever. Again, they drafted 3 offensive linemen. None of them were pure tackles, but they're trying to, put it wrap it in a nice little bow here and be like, City So could play tackle. Don't think so. Enough about the mangled offensive line for the Patriots. That's very frustrating. Raheem Mostert for the Dolphins. I was down on him for most of the year because they went and got Devon A-Chain. They've been in Jonathan Taylor talks. They were in on DeAndre Swift. Everything that they're kind of doing says they're looking for another piece of the pie there. A-Chain got injured. When they say week to week in the NFL, I typically find that to be like it's going to take a month for him to get back. And Mostert came out of the preseason game with the ones. He had all the carries. He didn't split any work. He had a touchdown. If he stays healthy, he's their RB1 and going to be a pretty decent player. I mean, he's always had like the speed. He's just been missing like staying healthy consistently. So that was a bit of a surprise for me. Something I kind of noticed during their starter reps is that he's in with the first team offense. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about the Dolphins right now. Really, all you could kind of take away from their starter reps, other than their offensive line, is also not very good. So yeah, the 49ers. So we were talking about Brock Purdy. I'm not a Brock Purdy hater. I'm just one of those guys is like, what happens if he isn't as good as he was last year? And last year is the outlier. There was a lot of kind of discussion coming from training camp saying that he has not had a great camp and he's throwing a lot of interceptions. He looked pretty good in the preseason game, I would say. Like in his starter reps, he looked pretty good. But again, does that hold up the whole season? This is another year where people have tape on him and understand his mechanics, and that's a little bit different to adjust to. So it looks like his camp downfalls were a little overhyped, but I am still a bit nervous on that whole quarterback situation. Like Sam Darnold might be the guy for them, and who knows what you're going to get there. You're just kind of closing your eyes and just picking a ball out, hoping you hit the lotto with one of them. And then the Seahawks, is the take that I had for them is that Zach Charbonnet is like exactly the guy they kind of needed in that backfield, because Ken Walker's been dealing with some injuries. He's more of your home run threat. Charbonnet gives you like a big bruiser type back who can play in between the tackles and still be explosive. And when the Seahawks, for years now, they've typically had one running back who's really good, and then they've had a bunch of Jags. When that one running back gets hurt, they have to reevaluate their offense and change like how they kind of do things, because they live off the run and the play action and like being that sort of like hard-nosed team. And I think Charbonnet gives them the ability to stay in their lane, essentially, even if Ken Walker gets hurt. And I think that's a really big thing that people don't really talk about all that much when it comes to an RB and his effect on the team. So I like the Charbonnet pick. I've liked him. I liked his work in college. So landing in a good spot. They're going to use him pretty well. And he looked good in the limited action that we've seen with starters. So that's my first four. Louie, you want to go next?
Yeah, I can just hit the whole AFC South, I think is what I'm going to do right out the gate. So for the Colts, my takeaway is that Anthony Richardson's mobility is as advertised, and I think you're going to need it because that offensive line looks just as bad as last year. So Colts fans, expect or hold your GM accountable to making moves after the waivers here, because that did not look pretty. So I think the real question is, how long can you wait to really buy into this kid's development, especially with everything that's going on? Jonathan Taylor's holding out. Offensive line looks bad. No true wide receiver one. Like, I think you're going to be right about them being in the running for a real, like, Marvin Harrison kind of player. The question is can they afford to pass on a tackle at that point? And I think that's the debate that Colts fans are going to be in next year.
I get that.
For the Titans, my takeaway is that Vrabel is just not ready to tank. They make moves. They've been making moves, signing D-Hop, trading for a kicker. Just some small things that make you think that he's not quite ready to lay down yet and to buy into this rebuild. My other big takeaway is that Levis lost out. Not that he's a bust or anything of that nature, but he is going to be QB3 on this depth chart. And part of that makes me wonder, like, Malik Willis looked pretty good this preseason. And it makes you wonder what kind of offseason evaluation they did or did not do on their own quarterback that they felt like they needed to take Levis there. Because even when they played together, I didn't think Levis looked light years ahead of a QB only in his second year. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops. Tannehill doesn't seem to stay healthy for a whole season. Like, he gets nagging ankle injuries or whatever. So one of these guys is going to get to play this season. There's no doubt in my mind. It'll just be which one and how do they capitalize on that opportunity. And then also Tajay Spears is Derrick Henry Jr. So nasty stiff arm in the preseason. And I was sitting there crying on my couch, knowing he's going to get 200 yards on us, because that's what every Titans running back does to a Texans defense. So, and for the Texans, my takeaway was Tank Dell must excel, because Nico's Collins still looking like he has drop issues. Did not see nearly as much of John Mechie this preseason as I wanted to. A lot of rest days for him, still recovering from his cancer diagnosis. So hopefully everything squares up and he can be the person that they drafted. But Robert Woods looks like Robert Woods, looks more like Bobby Trees, but the true engine of the offense is Dameon Pierce. I think that is going to hold true. He took so many RB1 snaps during preseason. Devin Singletary was hardly out there with the ones. So I'm expecting them to run him early and often to try and establish leads. And then I'm assuming they're going to let Singletary grind it out on the back end if they can get a lead. So, yeah,
What about the Jags?
Oh, for the Jags, yeah. For the Jags, I have it's tank time, but not in the way that you expect. I thought Tank Bigsby looked really good, except for that goal line fumble. So valuable touches, I still think if you care about this from a fantasy perspective, maybe I think valuable touches will still belong to ETN because he's the more polished back. But I think when it's like 3rd and 2, you're seeing Tank every time on that. Like he's a big bruising running back. Goal line work may not be as guaranteed as people think. The other thing I have is it's time for Ridley's revenge. I had a lot of doubts about him, and I will be honest with you guys, on like 20 fantasy drafts, I haven't taken him once yet. But I feel like I'm going to regret it all season long. He's looked good. He's looked fast. T-Law, I think, can elevate any player around him. So I think we're about to see a good season from Ridley. And I think the Jags will make a deep playoff push off of the back of a very competent offense.
Yeah, I like a lot of the things that you said there. Couple quick points on it. In my hot take article, I had when I had the Colts taking Harrison Jr., I kind of like alluded to the fact that when the Bengals had T. Higgins and they took Jamar Chase, like that would like Michael Pittman reminds me a lot of T. Higgins, and Marvin Harrison Jr. reminds me a lot of Jamar Chase. So like I think that 1A, 1B would really help Richardson kind of get into his potential, even if you don't have as good of an offensive line. Also, Calvin Ridley's going to torch this year, so stocks up on him with an aging Matt Ryan and 90 receptions, 1,300 yards, and 9 touchdowns in his last healthy season. So,
recapture.
But yeah, so I like a lot of the things that you said there. Blake, you want to do Jets Bills and then do the Rams Cardinals to finish up the NFC West?
Yes, sir. Like the way you think. Start with the Bills. So I mentioned it earlier. Offensive line is an issue for all 4 teams in this division. I would say that all 4 teams in this division have bottom half offensive lines, like below 16. I would say that the Bills probably have marginally the best of the bunch, but not mingly different. Like all of these games that we're going to see in the AFC East, we're going to see for the most part the offensive line losing, and we're going to see plays getting blown up. We're going to see the home crowds like getting really fired up and into the game after some big sacks. But where the Bills' offensive line is lacking specifically is the right tackle position. We have this guy Spencer Brown, the 3rd round pick from a couple of years ago. He's like 6'9". He's huge, but he was kind of playing hurt last year, and played pretty well his rookie season. He unseated the guy that we had ahead of him. Bills signed this guy Brandon Shell this year, but he ended up like unexpectedly retiring halfway through camp. So they really have like no depth behind him. They didn't really bring anyone in for competition that they really should have. That was kind of neglected. One target that they could maybe have is Calvin Beachum, this young kid who's got like a year or 2 left on his deal with Arizona. And then the other place that they're really lacking now is middle linebacker, where we just lost Tremaine Edmonds. We still have Matt Milano to play the well, but we need a Mike. And honestly, the guy like is a guy that Louie's Texans just cut, Christian Kirksey. Has started a bunch. I mean, he's not going to be Tremaine Edmonds. There's not really anyone out there that's going to replace Tremaine Edmonds. And and when I saw like the contract that Chicago gave him, I want to say he got like $72 million over 5 years or something. Like, good for him. And like, there was no way that we were going to be paying him that money with Josh Allen's contract, Diggs' contract, and Tre'Davious White's contract, and keeping Jordan Poyer. It was just too many mouths to feed. And good for Tremaine. But So now we have Tyrell Dodson and Terrell Bernard. It looks like it's probably going to be Terrell Bernard week 1 to start, but there's definitely going to be a drop off in the middle of our defense. We're going to have to figure that out. Anyways, moving on to the Jets. Jets have the of a debate. They have the best 1-2 combo at running back in the NFL with Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. Maybe someone could argue something else. I mean, but Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb is gone. There's probably some other good ones out there, but I don't know. I think Breece and Dalvin Cook's got to be the best. With all that being said, offensive line. The Jets might have in the division might have the worst offensive line. You could argue about which team is 20 and which team is 23 or 24, like in terms of like the NFL offensive lines. But yeah, Dalvin Cook was a really big pickup for them because he's a good pass blocker, and they're gonna need some extra help to try and keep Aaron Rodgers upright. But yeah, how is this offensive line going to hold up? The beginning part of their season is absolutely brutal, and then their schedule gets a little bit better. But we'll see how their line looks because they're going to be a liability. Moving on to the Rams. Matt Stafford, I guess, is having issues relating to all his teammates. His wife was said in
one of my favorite reports of the offseason.
Yeah.
Old man yells at kids on their phone.
Yeah.
Get off your damn phone, you dumb kids.
This was kind of something.
Study the playbook on paper.
Von Miller was kind of alluding to this with like he was talking to Kay Adams and whatnot about like the Bills culture and what it's like to play with Josh Allen. And one of the things Von Miller said about Josh Allen that makes him the most different from any other quarterback is that he's really one of the guys. And he's walking around like dapping everyone. He's got handshakes with everyone. He's pulling pranks on people. He's slapping guys' asses and like Brett Favre, and slap ass.
Like that Geno Smith little squeeze from last year.
Yeah, exactly. Got it. But anyways, Matt, and he's like, yeah, he's like, I've played with Matt Stafford, played with Peyton Manning. Like it wasn't like that. And anyways, what that told me is Cooper Kupp stocks are through the roof. They're the lower half of their wide receiver room is largely unproven. They got Van Jefferson at wide receiver 2. He never stays healthy for more than 3 or 4 games. I hope he does. But then you got Tutu Atwell and Puka Nacua. I think I'm saying that right.
Puka's the dude.
Yeah,
Puka's the dude. Don't worry.
He's him.
Yeah,
We'll
actually,
see.
it's gonna be good.
Well, apparently Puka's got to get off his phone and start talking to Matt Stafford.
He was at the breakfast table, but I guess Matt Stafford must have ordered some like marmalade or something. He left.
Pull up and eat your Wheaties in silence, young man.
And then moving on to the Cardinals, trade every single player on the roster that you're able to.
So let's talk about this for a second. How, after everything they're doing, how is Buda Baker still on this roster? I don't understand. There was such a scramble for premium safety talent this offseason, and they chose not to do that. And I don't know if it's because Gannon's a defensive coach, and so they decided, like, okay, we're going to hang on to our defensive guys, other than Isaiah Simmons, who they gave away for a stale bag of Cheeto Puffs. But
he might be a real impact player for the Giants. They're saying
I don't know, misutilized.
He wasn't used right at all. Like, he wasn't utilized the correct way. No. They tried to force him into a safety role instead of playing him as like a hybrid linebacker. And
I guess they're gonna play him at edge rusher. And
that's what I was just gonna say. He should pin his ears back and be like a quarterback.
Isaiah Simmons, Madden God of the user.
Yeah.
User God.
6'4", he's a beast.
Sorry, go ahead. Like
they're giving it, and I mean, I think you kind of have to read between the lines, but you have the answer right there. Like no one is really giving the Cardinals anything super significant for any of the pieces they're taking. And Buda Baker, they're probably like digging their heels in the ground and being like, kind of like what Chris Ballard and the Colts are doing with Jonathan Taylor. Like they're like, no, we want a second round pick and this and this and this, and people are like, all right, well, I got a 7th round pick here. Do you want it? And they're like, okay.
Best I can do is a conditional pick swap.
Yeah, pretty much. And this is not the year for the Cardinals. Their schedule's brutal. Their team's awful. Trade everyone. Get Caleb Williams.
Honestly, they have the Texans' 1st round pick, correct?
Yeah, they do.
If
then they can trade Kyler Murray and maybe get another one.
One of my other hot takes from that article was that the Vikings trade for Kyler Murray at the deadline. So a 1st and maybe a 3rd for him. Get rid of Kirk Cousins, get out of that contract, get I think Kyler and Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson's kind of a freaking issue. So, and then you're the Cardinals and you're like, word, I have 3 firsts in this draft. And then maybe you move Buda Baker, you get like a high 2nd and maybe another 4th. Then all of a sudden you have like 12 to 13 picks and like 4 or 5 in the top 50.
There's some good draft classes coming out. Yeah, they have the ability to really actually turn it around pretty fast. And they honestly turned it around pretty quick when they first drafted Kyler, but it was just mismanaged. And so yeah, this is a great year for the Cardinals to be bad. It's a good year to be bad in general for the few teams out there that I would in the NFL that I would really say are bad. I would say there's like maybe 5 or 6 of them at most. It didn't used to always be 10 or 12 were like bad, but it's not really like that anymore. And but these next couple drafts are going to be really exciting.
Yeah, I agree totally. I'm going to hop on to the AFC North now. So one of my big takeaways from the Bengals preseason is that they're gonna miss Jesse Bates in the secondary. I really think that they drafted now I'm forgetting his name. Where'd you guys go?
I think I might have done that. I think I might have changed the view. That's my bad.
I was like, what? Where did we all go? Why am I
typing on the wrong thing? My bad.
All good. So they drafted a couple of DBs, but I think Jesse Bates is one of those types of guys who brought leadership to that team, and a lot of he was one of those glue guys in the secondary. I also think his ceiling is the top 3 safety in the league. So I think that secondary, which is not the strong suit of the Bengals, is going to really miss Jesse Bates. Wasn't all that impressed by the starter reps for that team. I think they have a great pass rush. They have a couple of really good middle linebackers, but that's a really big issue for them moving forward, I think.
I think secondary is one of the hardest things to judge in preseason because a lot of teams keep that, especially super vanilla. Mm-hmm. Like if you're going to blitz, you're like, if you have a safety who's really good at blitzing, you're not going to do that in preseason.
That makes sense.
You know what I mean? Or you're going to shell coverage and then drop somebody back and pull somebody else up. You just don't do that stuff in preseason because you don't want to give away those real confusing plays, especially for younger QBs and stuff like that. So
yeah,
I do agree that they'll miss Jesse Bates, but to me, when you're evaluating preseason, that is the hardest thing to know because defenses just don't look the same.
Yeah, I totally agree there. So for the Steelers, this is also one of my hot takes. Kenny Pickett's going to win Most Improved Player of the Year. I think that I don't know, man. Pittsburgh's just this model organization that's run extremely well, and they're just really, really good at developing talent once again in the building. And I do think Kenny Pickett is talented. He started to show some of that at the end of last year, and all of his preseason reps that we've seen, it's dime here, dime there, ridiculous catch here, great play there. You know what I mean? I also think Deontay Johnson is going to be a really, really, really good player. I mean, he's a really good player anyway, but I think he might get some of that more like recognition that he really deserves. He's going to push for the target lead on this team, and he had 0 touchdowns last year, and he's typically between a 6 to 10 touchdown guy. So I think the regression comes, and he has a really big season for them. He's looked excellent in the preseason reps that we've seen him in. So yeah, I really like this. I like the Steelers and Kenny Pickett for most improved player of the year. The Ravens, Zay Flowers is going to be the best wide receiver on this team, and he might be the best rookie wide receiver in the league. He has a similar profile to Hollywood Brown, I believe, but I think his hands are just way better. He has the same speed, and he's a better catcher of the football. We've seen Lamar Jackson like to target the player downfield like Hollywood Brown, and he missed out on 4 or 5 more touchdowns when they were together because he dropped them. Rashad Bateman was one of my guys when he came out of college, and just the Ravens are another injury bug team, and he's just caught that injury bug. He can't stay healthy, can't stay on the field. So OBJ, one tough turn around from, losing another ACL. So Zay is the healthiest receiver there, and I honestly think he's the most talented currently. And he has a former MVP quarterback thrown it to him. Yeah, Mark Andrews is going to be great. Like, don't get me wrong, but wide receiver 1 is going to be Zay Flowers, I think.
He's got to help a triple tight end stack team.
Mark Andrews.
Huh?
That, I mean, having a wide receiver 1, great news for Mark Andrews.
Yeah, he actually has to be covered by a linebacker instead of getting the best. Like, all right,
I think
whoever's quarterback one
forward this year with the Ravens having an actual wide receiver core this year.
Yeah, I think they'll really struggle week 1 for some unknown reason, and then after their opener, after they play the Texans, I think they'll really find their stride.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at on the Ravens, and then the Browns. Deshaun Watson's rust might be real. It might be permanent. Who knows?
The low passes are so like I don't know how much you guys study quarterback mechanics, but like when he's trying to throw like full extension up and out, he is really overestimating the arc on the ball. Like if you watch that pass, the one that's fully extended upright is what he struggles with the most, and it's coming in low because he's undercutting the angle, and it's landing right at his receiver's feet every time. The deep balls still look fine. High passes over the middle, but if it's like you have to zip it into a tight window, it's almost always low.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to take half the season of like real like live game action of him having a full off season. Like he got a couple of games in last year, but wasn't fully prepared for those, I would say. It might not look great this season, but I don't believe it's a fully permanent issue, but like it's something that they should definitely be worried about. My hot take for the Browns though was that they're gonna every team in that division is gonna finish 10-7.
Every team,
the whole team in the division finishes 10-7. Yeah, so they're all really good teams. I don't think
that's gonna happen.
Has that ever happened?
It's a hot take for a reason.
Yeah, I get it. It could like theoretically happen. Like I can see how you could make the argument for it, but that's just like so unlikely. Hey, you should place that bet.
We have officially done.
Probably make if you hit on that. That would probably be a pretty nice little payout.
I'll take a look at it honestly.
So that's half of the teams, and we're at 55 minutes. So do we want to save the other 4 for next week, along with opening week preview, and just move to the edge rusher section?
Yeah, we could do that. Okay, I think that
Blake.
Yeah, that's it.
All right. So moving in, so we're going to end this week with top 5 edge rushers in the league. And before we get into this segment, I'm going to shame Tyler, who did not have TJ Watt on the first draft of this list.
Yep,
the world must know. So yeah,
Thanks, man.
you're welcome.
You know what?
Accountability is important.
It was a brain fart. It happens. There are a lot of edge rushers in the league, and he's technically hurt sometimes, so I don't see him all the time.
There's one guy on this list that I think is absolutely absurd that we all have here. I thought that was crazy. So, but you went and did your thing last. So Blake, why don't you start us off with your edge rusher number 5?
5, I had Max Crosby.
The tattooed god himself.
Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
He's just definitive. He's like, it's this guy.
Yeah, he's really come on the last couple of years. There's a couple other people like you could put at this spot. If Von Miller would have stayed healthy all year last year, he probably would have been on this list for me. But he missed 8 games, and he's gonna miss 4 games here, so he's kind of like in that honorable mention category. Joey Bosa also didn't make my list. He's kind of got the same issue, Micah Parsons was another one that I thought really could have been on this list that wasn't. Wanted to at least give those guys their attention, but yeah, Max Crosby number 5 for me.
Word. Yeah, for Parsons, I don't know if I categorize him as more of an edge rusher or just like I don't know. You know, he's just like might be the best defensive player in the league, but I don't know what position he plays.
He's not on my list either because I don't consider him to be a pure edge rusher. Yeah. But I would agree. I think like you're lucky if he's Isaiah Simmons, but everything they thought Isaiah Simmons was going to be honest. Yeah. I think the underrated part of Max Crosby's game is the mental aspect. If you guys watch the quarterback documentary, that boy trash talks, and I love it. I love defenders with attitude, man. There's nothing better than getting chippy on the field and just knowing that you're winning in every aspect, mentally and physically, and just I don't know. It rules, man. There's nothing like it.
He's also 6'7", which doesn't get talked about a lot. You're like massive, dude. All right, so my 5th guy might be a little bit of homerism here for me, but it's Matt Judon. I don't think he gets talked about enough. He came in and he had 12 sacks with a season high his first year, and then he came in the next year and got 15 sacks. He very well could push for 20 this year because they added another piece to that defensive line in Keon White. And just having, if Barmore stays healthy, Uche's there, and Keon White's there, you can't double Judon anymore. You're going to get one-on-one coverage, and he's a problem. He's got speed, power, technique, and the ability to do it. So I think he's very underrated here. He's my top 5 guy. Like I said, little homer in me there, but he's got the ability and the stats to back it up. So.
Yeah, I think being on the bad part of the Patriots' recent arc has kind of put him a little under the radar, but I would agree. I think Judon, easily, I don't even think debatably top 10 anymore. Like, he is top 10.
Yeah.
So top 5 is where the debate, I think it's a little tight, but which I have a really unpopular guy in my top 5. So number 5 for me is Will Anderson Jr. Brian Burns takes my 5th spot. Sometimes I feel like maybe I overrate Brian Burns a little bit, but when you watch the tape, the technique is beautiful. He wins off of any move he wants. He understands leverage both inside and out against premier tackles. He's got 38 sacks, I think, in 4 seasons, which is consistent like that. And that's injuries. So I think he will also get some coverage sacks this year if their secondary can stay healthy. And I think he's just one of those guys, like he understands the game at a fundamental level. Like he sees it at the right speed. He knows how to use his hands. And that just always translates to sacks. It always translates to production.
Yeah. I think me and Bahookie are going to talk about him as well. Bahookie, you want to hit with your 4th dude here?
Yeah, Brian Burns here. Yeah, he's incredibly underrated. I don't feel like a lot of people watch the Panthers, and by a lot of people, I mean myself.
You want to watch Sam Darnold? What the?
If I'm being quite frank, but he was one of the hot names at the trade deadline last year, and people were like offering 2 firsts for him, and they were still saying no, which is fucking crazy. Excuse my friend, but like to say no to just to 2 first-round picks for anyone that is not named Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, like. I feel like that says a lot about what type of talent you are. That's no, we're not taking any calls. Goodbye. But seriously, dude's a sicko, and we'll see how the Panthers take the next step. See if they can get their offense going and stay on the field a little bit longer and make sense. But Brian Burns number 3. Tyler, who do you so number 4? Who do you have at number 4, Tyler?
I had to move Burns back from 3, where I originally had him, to 4 because of my TJ Watt kerfuffle. So, my hot take for the Panthers was that Brian Burns pushes for Defensive Player of the Year, but he won't win it because they're the Panthers and they're going to suck. So you just won't win it. He probably should this year. I think another guy who's in line, who could be in line for a 20 sack season. Like, he's got speed, power. You said he understands leverages really well inside out against premier tackles, premier talent, bad team around him. Like, really doesn't matter. The guy really is a sicko. Like, he's just got all the tools. And like you said, it takes a lot for a team to just be like, yeah, we're not interested in your 2 first-round picks. We're going to go ahead and keep this guy on our team. And realistically, is he even going to be a part of their win now window? Like, I don't think so. So that probably wasn't a great move for them, but it just shows, A, what the league thinks of him, and B, what the Panthers think of him. So we should all think of him in that light as well. He was my 4th guy there. My 3rd guy.
Whoa, I haven't got to give my 4th yet.
Oh, my bad.
You go. My number 4 is Hassan Reddick.
Woo. Okay.
Your speed rusher, I think, is how I would classify him. But 3 seasons in a row, 3 different teams, double-digit sack production every single season. Dude just gets to the quarterback. Like, there's no other way to say it. He has hit his second gear. He started his first 3 seasons with 7.5 combined sacks. Since then, he has had almost 40. So there's something to be said about he's found a groove. And if he can stay there, if you can stay at between 13 and 16 sacks a season, that's dominant, a dominant stretch. And he's been hovering in that range. So, on a loaded Eagles offensive line, I think our defensive line, I think he's going to stay firmly in that top 7 conversation. I happen to have him at 4 going into this year.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Again, there's so many edge rushers and there's actually so much talent at this position that, like, he kind of slipped my mind because of the defense he's on. But again, that means he's not going to get double covered. He's not going to get these like insane protection schemes built around him because the defensive line's so good.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy that none of us are talking about Khalil Mack? Do you remember 2 years ago when Khalil Mack was like one of the best defenders in the league and he just fell straight off a cliff?
Yeah, he went to the Chargers. That's what happens.
Nice little blast from the past there. All right. Blakey, baby.
Yeah, Blakey,
these top 3 are.
We all have the same top 3.
Yeah. All right. Well,
the whole league has the same top 3.
I'm just going to say all 3 of them now.
Give the order.
Talk about it.
I got, and you can make an argument what order here, but I got Nick Bosa at 3. I got TJ Watt at 2. And I got Myles Garrett at 1. Nick Bosa might be the best pure athlete of the bunch. Those Bosa boys are just absolute sickos. They're out of St. Thomas Aquinas in Fort Lauderdale. I have a bunch of friends that like went to high school with them, and I've heard all kinds of stories about them that I can't say on TV. And I really, really respect their game a lot. With that being said, I have to give way to TJ Watt at 2 for his body of work. He tied Michael Strahan's sack record of 22 and a half. And I have a feeling that if he stays healthy on this particular Steelers sack record this year, that's hot take, not so hot take. I think the Steelers have looked like the most dominant team through this preseason, which, I mean, is kind of a dubious award, but based on what we've seen on tape from their ones, like Mike Tomlin has got his team ready to go. And I know Steelers fans have it out for him for some reason, but
hate the guy. Don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know. It's because Steelers out on everyone else.
It's really like if your rich aunt died and left you a ton of money, and then you use that money for bad things, and you're like, I hate my rich aunt for making my making me rich.
Dude, you're on these analogies right now.
You are the problem, Steelers fans.
But anyways, then Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is whoever your favorite edge rusher is. Like for me, Von Miller. Myles Garrett is your favorite edge rusher's favorite edge rusher. And like if you ever see edge rushers talk about like who's the guy, Myles Garrett. He's a freak, and he will rip your helmet off and hit you in the face with it.
Well, you don't. All you gotta do is provoke him to do that.
All you gotta do is not say the N-word.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that.
Good thing him and Nick Bosa play on opposite sides, right?
Yeah. So, dude, Myles Garrett. Yeah, he's everything. He's everything that the league thought Jadeveon Clowney was gonna be, and more. Sorry. Didn't even honestly, he's been on so many teams since then. I forgot you guys drafted him. That's how that went. But yeah, Myles Garrett's got literally everything in the tool bag to you hit the nail on the head with that one. TJ Watt could push for 30 sacks this year if he's fully healthy. That team is a completely different team when he's on the field. Whole different unit. And yeah, Nick Bosa may be the most pure athlete at the position.
I think that defensive line can push for 100 sacks total on the season. Like, and that's an insane number to think about. That's over ridiculous. 5 sacks a game. But
that's ridiculous.
If they did it, I would be like, go Tomlin. It's like that.
Sure. Okay.
Seems about right.
That's crazy. This is a real pretty much we're all in line with each other. We have one, like I have Judon, Bahookie has Max Crosby, and you have Hassan Reddick. But other than that, 4 out of 5 for us on this. We're pretty in line on our thinking here.
I have Watt at 3, Garrett at 2, and Trump Jr. at 1. So
I'm confused.
Is that Nick Bosa?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, didn't register that.
Now I'm understanding. Yeah, and I understand putting Nick Bosa or TJ Watt at 1. It's just I don't know. For me, if there was one player in the NFL I wouldn't want to get hit by at full speed, probably Myles Garrett.
One player I wouldn't want to get hit by at full speed.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Do they do follow through? Because Myles Garrett.
Oklahoma drill.
Have you seen that?
Myles Garrett following through.
Have you seen that clip of Trent Williams pulling on that one play for the Niners? And he obliterates that man into like the alternate dimension. Like that guy's chasing Miles Morales across the Spider-Verse. I don't know, man. There's some big boys in the NFL. I wouldn't want to mess with them.
But Myles Garrett's got that like meanness fact. He seems like a nice guy, but on the football field, he's got like that, like, yeah.
He puts the dog in dog pound.
Donald's another one too.
If this was 2 years ago, I would have said Aaron Donald. I do think that he's lost a little bit of his sheen due to injuries and just the whole makeup of that team.
Yeah.
But I think that wraps us up. Let's do a quick ad read and then get out of here, fellas.
Fifth Down Territory.
Oh, did our own ad read.
Thank you so much for listening to the Stadium Rant original. If you like our content, you should subscribe to our free newsletter, which will include exclusive interviews, articles of the week, and discounts on Stadium Rant merchandise. Visit StadiumRant.com to sign up for our newsletter today.
My bad. Hit our own ad read there for a second. We don't want to be that vain. But yeah, so that's our Fifth Down Territory. Next week, we're going to be hitting you with week 1 preview because that game will be 48 hours from this show next week.
It's crazy.
Can't wait.
We don't have to talk about this on air, but like there are people that live stream NFL games and like do commentary. I feel like if there's a way for us to do it, we should do one special episode where we do like Thursday Night Football.
I'd be down. I'd be down to do that easily. Guys, listen, tell us if you want us to do that. We'll definitely do it. I'll be totally with that. What do you think? Oh,
is Blake even there? Blake. He's thinking about the incoming hurricane.
I'm going to go ahead and just end